Hello, smiling evening, all of you. Today I'm going to talk about what is SRE, how your SRE is going to work. So basically, most of the audience will have this idea like why we use SRE, what's the difference between DevOps versus SRE. So basically, DevOps is all about how to work with CI/CD pipelines and taking care of responsibilities for automation of deployment, continuous deployments. Okay, but SRE is different because SRE is about metrics, about how your actual system behaves in terms of API responses, downtime, latencies. So it is all about SLOs, and that is the main concepts of SRE. So SRE is basically a critical component of today complex processes and organizations projects, right? So SRE, without SRE, what happens? Most of the products will have downtime, and there is nobody is going to take care of. So they expect 24 by 7 uptime, right? There is no kind of downtime, instant payment, zero errors, right? So SR is a when which is that is what evolved and it is being implemented in your phone pay, Google Pay, your Paytm. SRA is something always in the banking, fintech, or any kind of applications. Because there is you can observe SRE because of SRE. You see there is always in Google Paytm everywhere there is no kind of downtime. Maybe you still see there is a downtime at the banking servers, right? Because they don't have, even though they have this SRE implemented, but still their systems are incompatible with in terms of the efficiency, right? So manual ops cannot scale. So that's the reason they bring engineering plus operations together, right? So that's why all the higher organizations or high type of products, hi-fi tech products, they are using automation, they are using observability, they are using, they're trying to create up the speed of reliability. Okay. So basically, SRE is an example is that if you take any product and they try to find the metrics in terms of how much latency that product is, or how much time it taking a request, how much metrics of latency is delay is happening. So they try to see the indicator and objective and then set this. Okay. So for example, for ensuring that service meets business expectations, so they will see every time that service should be 99% uptime. Okay. They see the error rate, how many fraction of failures, what is the latency time to respond to the request, and throughput, how much request per second the service can handle, the resource usage compared to capacity, how much CPU is there, this is one important aspects of it. Now I'll talk about SRE in Flipkart. So I'll take a demonstration of Flipkart. So as we discussed today in Flipkart, if you see, without SRE, the old traditional model, they had a checkout success rate only 97%. Okay. Now with SRE, they're able to achieve 99.95%. And even API latency, you can see there's a lot of reduction. So their downtime was in hours sometimes, but now it's minute. And their deployment frequency, previously it was weekly, now it is multiple times in a day they can do. So customer complaints also they had. Okay. So why it happened this challenges. So initially, if I talk about Flipkart Big Billion Days, sometimes app used to get crashed under peak traffic, or sometimes we used to get customer gets abandoned in the carting only, carting stage only it gets abandoned. They have a revenue loss. So because they had a manual operations, the deployments were manual and longer downtime, they had rollback messes, right? So all the alerts were react, even though customer complained it, but they still they DevOps people push the features where even the stability was poor, and again there was a high downtime. There was no error budgeting. So then, I mean, Flipkart started understanding the response times, error ratios, their deployment frequencies, and their CPU and memory usage. So they check all these aspects, and their everything they tracked it. So down the line when they tracked it, so they found it like they have to track basically the business goal versus reliability, and it is not about infrastructure, it is all about because they have to keep the trust that it has to be there. So down the line I'll talk about SREs. If you see actually how SRE role fits is, sometimes there's a DevOps role. DevOps role will talk to cloud, connected to cloud, there is a SRE layer. So this is how organizations keep it. So post connecting to the cloud, they add SRE that will monitor, alert your incident management. They'll have SLI and SLOs, and then the feedback loop to DevOps team or cloud team or maybe the development team. Rollback happens. So basic architecture, if I'm explaining it, some of you would ask you this architecture. So I'll put it across this architecture, a little bigger one or bolder one. Okay. So if you see this architecture itself is very excellent. If there is a client, any who is using mobile app or web app, if it's interacting to API gateway, then it comes to mobile microservices. Okay, it can be any microservice. From the microservice, it interacts to database. Post database interaction, they'll connect to SRE. Okay, then especially Flipkart has SRE monitoring happening, like how many requests are coming, what is the latency, how much error rate, how many throughput is efficient. Then it interacts to DevOps CI/CD, and it will do auto deploy or rollback operations. Right? This is how a production use cases happens. So as I explained, the metrics that organizations currently see is what is their current metrics in terms of how much is the latency, what is the availability, what is the error rate, how much uptime we can bring up, okay, how to use error but just to balance reliability, and we see all these aspects. Okay, so auto scaling infrastructure, self-healing, automated deployment, that is all automation we do. But monitoring and strong understanding that monitoring, why that does a downtime, and immediately how do we take care of that monitoring part. Okay, so this SRE was initially a discipline from Google, and that applied from a software engineering principles to operations. It's to make always all the services reliable, scalable, and efficient, because traditional operations were manual, slow, and people were have to take that. So SRE engineers builds tools and automations, monitoring and resilience. They resilience the issues, right? That's the faster thing. So if you see a basic real-time world, if there is an application which is built, that built application will have services, and that services interacts to reliability, that is SLO and SLI, because this SRE team ensures that that service is available and scalable. Okay, so a flow of SRE is traditionally we build like this. Recent clients, what we build. If there is a client is suppose user or customer is clicking on checkout API, it will call to mobile service. That service, when it logs in, we try to implement SRE. How, what was the response time he logged in, how much time it took response to get that API, and if there is any error, we log that error also, payment error. Okay, and if there is any other suppose if there is any issue with the DevOps thing, that also we do auto remediation of DevOps notification. So we try to see both thing. When the API is being hit, we see the response time log and the payment error, anything log. We see the Prometheus and we alert if the error ratio is greater than that. We see this. This is how SRE basically does this, different from DevOps. Okay, in a functionality level. So most of the companies which we have worked with, traditionally they are shifting from ops to SRE. So ops is basically manual development, deployments, what they do, and they wake up at 3 a.m. and then they deploy. Okay, then they focus only on uptime. They will only focus, they want to be uptime, that's it. They don't want to see other aspects. But SRE is automating CI/CD pipeline, mainly monitoring and observing. It is like continuously you are checking your performances. SRE is trying to check the performances of your product, whether it in terms of anything, in terms of all the aspects. See, even your cloud performance we check, that we do with cloud thing. But in SRE we see the actual system, the product systems, how they behave, and the monitoring and observability. And we also want to post-mortem that faster, right? So that's very, very important. So if you observe traditionally today in the modern world, you can see Uber SRE, Uber has SRE, and you can see a lot of companies like Google Pay, Phone Pay, as I told you, these all have SREs, because they are trying to work with SRE only because they are trying to automate every possible CI/CD, observability, reliability, and innovation. Because all great companies try to put a lot of time in inventions of right? They try to scale some new features and they do that. So traditional operation is manual fixing, reactive monitoring, only uptime thing. We cannot do that. So in the coding level, I'll tell you that. So the basic thing is that uh, we are trying to focus on reliability as innovation, because in today modern world, people are trying to integrate a lot of features to the product, right? When they add new features or anything, too much they focus on innovation also, right? So sometimes what happen, your new features adds, your system will sometime behave differently. Because of new feature, system crashes also happen. So we want to check always the 99.9% uptime, and allowed downtime is always 0.1%. So if your system is always 99.9% uptime, that's a very, very important sign of your system greatness. So how do you ensure that 99.9% of your uptime? And that we implement with SRE principles, and that is what we are going to discuss in the next upcoming thing. But before that, I will talk about the business metrics that companies have kept. So the important business metrics that in SRE the companies check depends upon the product. Suppose you take Flipkart thing, they check the SRE metrics, like they want to have check code success rate is like percentage number of successful orders. Like they want to see 99% of successful checkout rate. Search success rate, they'll say 99.5%. Card abandonment due to errors, they want to see less than 1%. This is a critical business metrics that they keep according to the product. I gave an example of Flipkart, but it depends upon banking. They keep banking also. Each of them are trying to implement this business metrics. So the SRE closely works with the DevOps team and cloud team, and then they interact how the production deployment teams are working and how they work on it. This is an impact that SRE can create for a great product, and in terms of self-healing the product with continuous innovations in your product features. So Flipkart is one great story of installation of SRE. So we'll be talking about next session about other agile